Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about episode 2 of season 2 of The Boys. So a lot of interesting things went down in this episode. Obviously, we kind of, picking up, where last episode left off, we kind of open with the whole Butcher situation, kind of understanding what happened. Like, because I kept wondering, like, okay, so how did you get out of that Homelander situation? He ends up being dumped in front of, like, a store somewhere, and in the grand scheme of things, it's kind of what I brought up last episode. Becca made a deal so that Homelander wouldn't kill him, And we find out it's an exchange that you get to see your son as long as you don't kill Butcher, so... And Butcher, like, because he was staring at this letter and it had all this stuff, and I was like, oh, you don't know where you were, so you're trying to remember every little detail so that it could help you find out where Becca was. I thought that was such an interesting aspect to the whole situation, because I guess, like, Homelander, like, knocked him back out and then, dropped him off, so he wasn't awake during the flight, so he has no idea how to actually get there in the grand scheme of things, so... I thought that was kind of interesting. There's also, like, the little press run that, it's like, oh, yeah, the girl power of the 7, because now, it's Starlight, Maeve, and now Stormfront, and obviously, like, the whole situation with Starlight having to do, like, she's knocking out those commercials, like, okay, because she has to do these very specific commercials for these specific stations, it's like, oh yeah, like, blah, 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 insert, station's name or whatever, and she's like, now let's kind of knock these out. I wish we could have gotten more with, like, her and Ashley, because that's got to be awkward, but I guess Ashley's probably like, who cares, I'm actually in a better position than I was initially, so I'm okay with the fact is I kind of got fired because of you, now I'm back in a better position, so, but like, because, we just kind of jumped to that, what I thought was fascinating too was, like, Stormfront's approach to this whole thing. Like, she's very open about everything. Even her being like, oh yeah, sorry Ashley, but I don't have any pockets up here. I mean, she's like, literally look at Starlight, you could pretty much see her uterus. But the fact that, like, she's very, because that's what it's so confusing with Stormfront, like, at least where we are right now, it seems like, oh, maybe she is someone that's coming into this just being herself. But the fact is that Edgar made her, let her join specifically, like, I think that speaks volumes. I think he has his own plans, and like, because, based on the trailer and stuff like that, I'm wondering how much does Stormfront know. The fact is, we see at one point in time, Homelander lasered her boobs, like, makes me think, like, she's in on it. Like, she has to, especially if Edgar's led, like, there might be some special connection in that, like, that might be, like, his right hand, like, oh, this is my most loyal person, so anything that's going down between the 7, like, I think she is a spy. She's calling, Starlight out by being like, oh, are you a spy? Are you wired? Like, because she's like, oh, I used to look up to you, Starlight, but now it's just look at you. You've kind of changed because of all of this and stuff like that. And obviously for Stormfront, she's not changed. But part of me is like, are you there to keep an eye on the 7? Is that your specific job? And report it back to Edgar. That's what I'm wondering. And once again, I've not seen episode 3 yet, so maybe I get some of these answers in episode 3. But it's just like, I get that inkling about her. But, we'll kind of see how things kind of turn out. I thought it was interesting, too, with the Maeve situation, her going to check on Elena. It seems like it was like her appendix was about to bust, so I'm assuming appendicitis. But Maeve was there checking on her, not as Maeve, obviously, like, because it's like, oh, one of my, I guess either her original name or one of her other aliases or whatever is, like, still as kind of her emergency contact. So she came to check on her, and Elena's like, oh, I want to go out, have dinner, or something. And then, Maeve kind of quickly changes the subject. And for Elena, it's like, obviously what she brought up season 1, like, oh, like, this superhero thing again, like, oh, you can't be seen in public with me. But then Elena makes it clear. Maeve makes it clear to her, like, the reason why is because she's like, the last time someone got close to me, just a producer switched seats around. It was like at the premiere of, like, 12 Years a Slave. It's like a producer wouldn't get close to me, chatted me up. His office was on fire. Then they found his head and his torso in different rooms. And it's like, she's like, I don't want him to do that to you. And then Elena's like, who? Homelander? And she's like, you won't believe the stuff that he's done. What I've known. We've seen firsthand, like, because I'm sure that flight situation last season, I'm sure that still sits with her, but it seems like that's just one of me. And I think that right there in itself is supposed to show you how controlling Homelander can be. It's like, oh, it's my way or the highway, It's just like, because Maeve seems like she has a hard time saying no to him because he's scary. Because even as powerful as she is, like, Homelander's on a different level. I mean, he even talks about this episode kind of treating himself like a god, but like probably very few people in this world that could go toe to toe with him. And so it's just kind of like, you know, but it's not just what he's done, it's what he's made her do. But once again, it's just like he's done terrible things, and by proxy she's kind of done terrible things because he's kind of given her no choice. And so I think a lot of stuff last season, everything with Starlight obviously changed her perspective on a lot of stuff, because she talked about it. She was like Starlight once upon a time, wanted to do good, and it just, that part of her got slowly chipped away. That part of her soul got chipped away because of Vought and everything, and I'm sure Homelander was a big part of that, you know, as well. So I think that's such an interesting element to that story. I'm curious to see kind of what that go, because obviously it's like, well, why tell me now after all the time? It's like, and for Maeve it's like, because I don't want you to hate me anymore. And it's like, that's sad, because it's like she always kept her at a distance because I don't want you mixed up in my BS. Like, it's not just because of perception and image and stuff like that. I'm sure at one point in time it might have been like that, but it's more so than anything, you know, Homelander, you know. So I'm curious to see where that storyline ends up going. I mean, that's Maeve, you know, she probably will try and stay with Elena and keep it a secret, and Homelander might eventually find. I mean, to be fair, Homelander is dealing with his own situation this episode. Obviously he's sticking around, wanting his son to use his powers and everything. But obviously, you know, Becca wants to raise him as a normal kid, but it's like he's anything but fucking normal. And then we find out where they are. They're not in a regular, like, oh, cul-de-sac. It seems like it's a regular place until you get to, like, the edge, and, like, there's a giant barricade, and it's like, oh, like, this is a vault, like, Pleasantville type of situation. It's a neighborhood they built so that Ryan, her son, can feel some form of normalcy. It's basically like a giant testing tube. Like, he's in it because it's like, this is unprecedented territory. A superhero having a kid, like, of course they're going to keep eye on him. It's like, okay, as long as, like, I'm sure Becca had no choice in the matter. It's like, we will keep you safe, keep you hidden from Homelander and all that, but we get the advantage of studying Ryan. Obviously, you know, Becca's like, the fact of the matter is you can't, you got to let us out of here. You got to make him leave. It's like, no, because the company's pretty much decided. Basically, the Vault's like, we're scared of shit of him, and last thing we want is this world's Superman going on a tantrum. We saw, I mean, I don't know if they know this, but I mean, obviously we know he killed Mallory because of this. You know, it's like, oh, you keep him from his son now that he knows. It's gonna cause some issues. He's gonna go on a rampage, and let's keep him pacified. Let's keep him happy. You know. So Dr. Park is telling her to kind of be okay with it. Eventually he'll get bored, and she's like, no, I don't think he will. And the scary, super, super scary thing is that, like, Homelander brings it up later on. He's like, yeah, tell Dr. Park to go fuck himself, because I am not going. You're right. I'm not going to get bored. I'm not going in. And the look on her face like, oh, you heard everything. You know what the deal is. And it's like, because most likely is he probably always keeps his super hearing out listening for her. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, because we don't know the full extent of what he's capable of, but, like, she was far away when she had that conversation, and he heard. That was a couple miles away, and it's just like, I guess if he's constantly focused enough, he could hear, like, that's scary. Once again, he's a scary Superman. Once again, that's what this is. Like, is Superman... What, you know, the fears that Lex Luthor has about Superman, Homelander is the embodiment of that. You know, that's kind of his part playing the story. But even what he told Ryan, I thought was interesting, where it's like, obviously it's like, I grew up not having any parents. He's like, but the fact that, you know, it's like being basically better than everyone else, above everyone else. And the fact is he's got that mentality in itself, speaks volumes. But it's like, the fact is that you're superior to them too, Ryan. It's like, it's not easy being gods amongst men. And it's like, okay. And there we get into the egotistical aspect to this whole thing. That God complex that, you know, Homelander has. And even trying to, like, give it to, like, Ryan. But you can tell, I think Ryan himself is scared of his dad. He's like, I'm going to go to bed. And then he's like, I love you. He's like, and then he'd say, like, I mean, you don't have to, but you could say it. He's like, you can say it too. It's like, it wasn't more of a, oh, you know, it's like, oh, you don't have to say it. It's like, no, you can say it too. And he's like, yeah, I love you too. And he's like, this is nice. And it's like you're kind of forcing your, like, because he's scared of you. And now Homelander's holding it against Becca, like, oh, what you think, eventually your son's going to want to go out. Like, oh, because he doesn't have any friends. It's like, what if he decides he wants to go out, kind of live his life and, wants to go to a Burger King, but can't? What if what's he going to be like when he finds out that his entire life was a lie? And I think this is going to be the interesting thing. Because obviously this is comparing and contrasting with Homelander. Homelander grew up in the lab. He didn't have any parents. It was always scientific. There was no love. At least with Becca, she loves him and everything, but maybe that might make things worse. He might have a predisposition to... I mean, this is going to be the ultimate test of nurture versus nature, because it was, well, not even nurture versus nature, to a certain extent, because it's like, obviously, the circumstances that made Homelander what he did is because he grew up a little resentful, doesn't really know what love is because of that. So that's why interacting with his son is so weird and awkward, because he doesn't know how to interact with people, really. He kind of, he's so used to just being better and standing above everyone else, And then the case of his son, at least he has his mother's love, but like I said, that might make him even more resentful of like, oh, you lied to me my entire life, so... Homelander knows what he's talking about when he's like, oh, like, he'll despise you for it, I mean, hell, he despised, Madeline. Did I say Mallory earlier? I'm trying to think, did I say Mallory earlier instead of Madeline? If I did, I'm sorry, I meant to say Madeline and not instead of Mallory. But, he killed Madeline because she lied to him for so long, so it's, it's kind of the same thing, and I'm so interested to see where that storyline ends up going. There's also the situation with the Deep. Obviously, Carol's got him, like, writing stuff about himself, also drawing. And she's like, oh, you're missing something. I'm like, what is he missing? And then it took a while. I was like, the gills. It's like, right. Then Eagle has him kind of going on, like, almost like this inner, like, had him basically on mushrooms or whatever. He's hallucinating. But it's supposed to be his journey, his trip. And then his gills start talking to him. And then the moment his gills are like, bro, we need to talk. I had to pause. I was like, is that Patton Oswalt? Looked, it's super Patton Oswalt. I was like, it sounded like Patton Oswalt, which is so dope. Obviously, comic book related stuff, because it's obviously like, he even made a final appearance, well, the final appearances, I think, in the final season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Obviously, the graphic novel / comic book series, Happy, which I'm still bummed about, but regardless, it's just comic book stuff. But I just thought that was neat, and that, I think, was an interesting breakdown of why the Deep is the way he is with women. I mean, it doesn't justify what he does, but it's interesting learning why, the psychology behind it. That basically he treats women like shit because it's like, they're going to laugh at me. It's like, that woman in particular didn't laugh at you. You just like let that, it's like, oh, she could have been good to you. Good to you and good with you. But the fact of the matter is, he rather, like, defile a woman's body before, like, they can see his, because he's like, oh, they'll ultimately reject me. Because of his own insecurities, he pushes that on women and kind of, treats them like shit. That's why he did what he did for Starlight, because he feels lesser than, and he feels like any woman's just going to reject him. So, like, that psychology is why he does what he does. Once again, not justifying it, just from a psychological standpoint, it's like understanding why he feels the need to do that, But it's like coming to terms with himself. Him and his gills singing "You Are So Beautiful" to me, that was interesting. Realizing that he's ugly on the inside, what this means in the grand scheme of things. This is going to be his journey back to the Seven. Who he's going to be at the end of all this will be interesting as well to see, what his story kind of. Once again, what the hell is Carol's whole deal? Like, I'm waiting, because I'm like, once again, I brought it in my first episode review. It just seemed mad suspect. It just seemed super suspicious. We'll see. So there's all of that. Kind of also continuing the whole situation from last episode as well is the whole Huey situation with Butcher. Butcher's coming in running things like, okay, this is how things are going to go. But Huey's like, are we really just going to be like, okay? He left us for dead and everything. He's like, I'm sorry that I have faith that these guys would have gotten out of any situation because they've done it countless times before. It's like, I love that you're spinning it like that. at the very least be honest. You didn't give a shit about them. You could say that, but it's like, no, you were so dead set on your revenge, you didn't care about anything else. So, keep that, keep it 100, But I think, because I guess he just doesn't, because if he admits that, I guess he feels like they'd be less likely to follow him. But he's also belittling Huey, being like, oh, like, what do you think they're going to do, follow you? Because Huey's standing up to him. It's like, Huey, because I guess for him, because Huey followed him so much last season, and now, like, Huey's not his buddy anymore, because it's like, oh, you're standing up to me, you're trying to go against my commands. What do you think they're gonna do? Follow your ass? It's like, for one, he's the one that made sure they got out. Like, yeah, maybe they could have gotten out on their own, but they didn't. Huey had their back when you didn't, and I think that is so mad effed up that he treats Huey that way, I think it's just pure. I mean, it's because of what he's fighting for, but also I think Butcher doesn't like being challenged by Huey in particular, Because obviously, like, Frenchie and Mother's Milk call him out for his bullshit, but it just seems like, in particular, it's like Huey calling him out. It seems like it irritates him more than anything else, But Butcher goes and meets with Mallory because she's at, Raynor's funeral and everything. And so it's a whole, even her threatening, like, oh, I'll turn you in. It's like, I'm curious, would she have really done that? Considering you brought him into the fold with this fight and everything. And so it's like, obviously there's this soup terrorist. It's like, he's the one that killed Raynor, so I'm going to go after. Well, we don't know for sure, but it's like, we have some idea, we got to track down the soup terrorist. But obviously she's like, all right, like, you're BSing me. He's like, fine. We don't see the conversation, but you can tell he's most likely telling her about everything with Becca and everything. So Mallory is willing to help them if they can capture the soup terrorist, get their slates clean and everything else. And it's like, are you effing with? And it's like, all right, let's do this. It's not till partway to the episode when they end up tracking him down, because Mallory was able to track down the soup terrorist, that it's not till they got there and Kimiko's looking at the origami, and I still didn't get it. And then, because earlier she was telling Frenchie, like, she wrote down boy, girl, and she was trying to underline boy, and I was like, I don't get it. And then I was immediately like, it wasn't until they got there and her looking at the origami, I was like, your brother. I was like, I'm so stupid. Because that's what I was wondering, was like, why would you recognize, like, why would that kind of make you go, boy, like, why would you notice that? Like, I didn't get it. It's like, your brother's style, that your brother would always probably fold that specific thing. So probably, like, she immediately figured out that it was her brother. I was like, that makes sense. And so they're going in there looking for him, and they find some shining liberation dude, and she snaps his head off, and Frenchie sees the tattoo in his chest. It's like, that's what this is all about. He's like, what's going on here? And it's not till Huey and Frenchie are looking until Frenchie's like, it's her boy. That's what she was trying to tell me. It's her brother. And Huey's trying to stop Butcher, but Butcher goes through with it, but Huey, end up stopping, so Kimiko runs with her brother. Butcher wasn't too happy about it. But when it was all said and done, and it's like, okay, you get the fuck out, you two follow me, but they don't. And then Butcher's like, what? Don't tell me both of you are basically getting seduced by, like, Huey's perspective. Because even Huey was almost shocked that Frenchie and MM didn't go with Butcher. And it's like, yes, I want to get back. Like, yes, her family situation isn't more important than my family situation. But the fact is, Kimiko is one of us. And the fact is, we'll find another way. But then Butcher came clean. It's like, all right, this is about Becca. She's alive. Mallory will help me find her if we bring in the soup terrorist. So he's like, I'm asking for your help. And Kimiko, spending time with her brother, apologizing about, she blames herself because, like, I'm the big sister. Because he's trying to tell her it's not your fault. It's like, but for her, it's like, she was sitting here on a mission, and then they injected her, and she's like, I became the monster that I am. But he's like, if you're a monster, I'm a monster too. And so for her, it's like, she feels like she failed as a big sister. Like, it's my job to protect you, not you protecting me. But then it's sad that we see that he's kind of got sucked into the Shining Liberations, stuff. Like, yeah, because for him, it's like, there's a superhero that splits someone in half. Part of me was thinking, like, it was either, I'd assume out of anyone, it was most likely Homelander. You you get the feeling. But for him, it's like he's along with all. I mean, and I think that's when you get kind of brainwashed by a group to believe something. I mean, yes, the Seven are an issue, but not everyone. Obviously, the boys don't side with the Seven and stuff like that. But it's like you're with this terrorist group. Because before you were forced into this situation, but now it's a situation where you wholeheartedly now believe in their message. Because he's saying like, oh, they're trying to fight injustices, so he believes in what he's doing. But Kimiko's like, no, like we could go back to my friends, or we could just go back. You know, we can find maybe grandma and grandpa are still alive in Japan. It's like we don't have to like go down this route, like saying that the Shining Liberation is full of shit is kind of what she's saying. But her brother, he's so radicalized now that he believes. Like, obviously, situations with Vought and the Seven kind of play into, because it's like our entire village is gone. There's no one there. But also for her, it's like, you're talking about working with the same people that murdered our parents. It's like, are you forgetting that little detail, So she's trying to stop her brother, but her brother, flings her into the building. Obviously, he, fully doesn't know what his sister's capable of. So she ends up tackling him and knocking him out. And obviously Butcher comes over afterwards. He's like, all right, at least one of you have good sense. And he's kind of smirking, and she kind of looks up in him and scowls, and that smile of his kind of goes away, because it's like, you have your family situation, this is her family situation. Don't talk shit like that mildly. So it's like, all right, let's go. And Butcher punches Huey, and it's like, hey, if you ever get in the way of me being reunited with my missus, I'll fucking kill you. And it's like, for one, you suck, Butcher, because it's not like Huey knew that, because once again, you did what you did. You never told everyone straight up what was happening. Things would have been different if you had been upfront from the very beginning, but you weren't. The fact is, Huey sided with you this time, but it's like, oh, you should have sided with me the first time. There shouldn't have been any issues. It's like, and so Huey just kind of has to take it, because what did Huey say last episode? He doesn't have anything outside of it. This mission is all that he has. So he wipes up the blood, gets in the van. No one's really saying anything. MM's like, you coming? And that's about it. It's like no one's calling Butcher out for his VS. It's kind of like, it is what it is. Like, that's just how you're going to have to solve your issues. It's like, it just sucks. Once again, you kind of feel bad for Huey. It's like Butcher's the one that was in the wrong in this case. But, so there's that side of things. And then finally, there's the whole situation with Starlight, because A-Train is alive. It's like, yeah, he's alive and well and everything. He's fine, and obviously Starlight's kind of like, and then like obviously like A-Train's playing coy with her about everything. It's just kind of, he's like, oh, he's got like Prince's guitar. He's like, oh yeah, this is Prince's guitar from Purple Rain. I just woke up and I was like, you know what, I want this, so I got it. And the fact is, obviously, it's that back and forth. That was interesting though when she like hid the vial because she got it from Gecko. And A-Train's patting her down. It's like, I don't have it. And it's like, it's in Stormfront's back as you see it as she's walking away. So, it also presents a really interesting situation to the whole Stormfront and Starlight situation, where she's telling Starlight that not everything has to be like a PR situation, because she's like, I'm not all cool with Vought as you think I am, because you basically, Stormfront's like, if you have issues with Vought, like, just say what you want to say. You don't have to keep wearing this mask all the time. And brings up, it's like, do you know who the greatest superhero in the world is? And Starlight's like, Homelander? She's like, no, Pippi Longstocking. And it's like, what? It's like, wait, you've never read Pippi Longstocking? And Starlight's like, I don't think so. So it's just a thing of like saying what you want to say, be who you want to be. Don't kind of change for anyone. That once again, that's how Stormfront is. Once again, I get the feeling like there's more to that. We'll see in the long run. But her sneaking that vial out, trying to contact Huey. A-Train's there. He finds the vial on her, and he's willing to turn her in. It's like, Homelander should have killed you the moment he found out you were banging Huey. But then she's like, she kind of goes a little bit blackmail mode, and it's like, you're not going to do anything. Once again, it's interesting because it seems like the roles have kind of switched a little bit between Annie and Huey. At least that's how I'm looking at it. But her kind of blackmailing A-Train, like, oh, you killed Popclaw, right? That's what you told Huey. The fact that she's like, oh, I looked into the report, and all those needles being jammed in her almost at the same time, even to the point one actually burst through one of her bones. Like, would someone really have done that? Because basically it's like, you want to expose me, I'll expose you too. He's like, if I get dragged out, I'll drag you down with me. We'll both be dead. And she's like, I don't care. It's fine. And it's like, is that her really not caring, or is that her playing, is that her bluffing A-Train? Because even he was kind of shocked by her saying that. So it's like, so she takes the vial from his hand. So it's like, I'll keep your business secret, you keep mine secret, Because it's like, Vaught's going to want to bury this. So obviously they're not going to bring anything up. But if like I leak this to like Sports Illustrated, it's going to turn your world upside down. So, because she's trying, I think given the opportunity, she'll probably try and explain it to A-Train what's going on. It's like, you don't really know what's going on here at Vought, or do you? It's like, because some of them know the truth, others don't. Because they had brought that up, last episode. I think Edgar had brought up the fact is that not every, or maybe that was last season, I'm blurring it together in my head. It might have been last episode, that Edgar was like, not every superhero knows how they were made. So not all of them know about Compound V. It's like, how many people in the Seven know, though? Does A-Train know? Does he know about the super terrorists? I mean, granted, that was more of a Homelander thing, so I'm sure no one else knows. Maybe Black Noir, who knows? I never read into it, but I thought it was interesting. I randomly, because I did a nerd mode about the boys, I was looking up pictures and stuff like that, and I was looking up Black Noir, a picture for Black Noir, and I just randomly saw some text being like, oh, why Black Noir is even more effed up than Homelander or something like that. I was like, I guess it's stuff from the comic book, so maybe it's stuff that hasn't come up yet. Whatever the case may be, I think we're once again seeing instances of that, with the whole thing he did at the beginning of last episode. But regardless, I think, circling back to it, the fact that Huey didn't get in contact with Annie, I think is proof that he's trying to keep her at a distance. But it's not going to, once again, the dice have already, like I said last episode, the dice have already been cast, so she's already still doing this on her own. Like, things are in motion, and things are probably going to end very badly because of that. We'll see in the long run kind of how this ultimately ends up playing. I'm very curious to see where all this ends up taking us going into episode 3. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, light to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.